child. Builders choose not to seal the roof. Spitfire, when the blind are denied sight of learning, when rain turns to urine, when sirens drown out a prophet. Spitfire, when patriarchs unzip the budding virgin, when she-devils worm away the last fruits of Eden, when the frayed nerve claims to be a rope. Spitfire as you think forward to the day after the revolution. Just to say a few words about what inspires me to write. It's to be engaged and also to be enraged, particularly in the current time when we see genocidal wars, we see propaganda reaching a climatic peak, we see every notion of accountability trashed. So for an artist, what purpose is there to keep scribbling? One might say it's a pure indulgence, and yes, it is. At the same time, we have to vent when our consciences are shredded. And so I move to the second poem, which is a dedication, cradling the prophetic torch, dilating with incense and other sacred herbs, once fallen to snakes and gold, to swollen glands and panting needs, for you, pure and sullied ones, those with battered shields, contending with the solar wind, ploughing fresh fields to plant bloodied seeds. For you, a crown of fierce white thorns, ring of frayed notes from a weathered pipe, jagged scar furrowing velvet skin. This chain of words, fashioned from the white embers of eternal fire, that rolls out of the belly of becoming that smile, living beyond dying cells in the body, wrinkled hands defiling the innocent, mob breath fouling roses, the rancid grease of money. All these words for you, dreamers and fighters, pure and sullied ones. State of the dominant species. 1.3 billion crammed on the polluted banks of a caste-ridden Hindu ethno-nationalist river. 1.2 billion squatting under the glare of a Hong Kong communist Confucian robot. Over 1 billion squashed in the cradle of humankind, crushed under the sagging belly of the big man and his sadistic cohorts. Over 400 million on the patios of sunglassed colonials and Bolivarian generalissimos. Another 340 million dangling at the ends of kryptonite missile heads emblazoned with the stars and stripes of puritanical slavers. Another 200-odd million bored by Bruxelles, strangled with the toxic tape of snarling lily-white borders, only rivaled by the 140 million licking the KGB's lips with their frozen sweat, and then the 7,400 million women forced to robe the rape fantasies of bearded children, and the 529 million depressives devoted to gurus who ride pope-mobiles over canonical cliffs. And lastly, the 13 million pedophiles pawning their hormones, chanting the bitch names of their heavenly mothers. Slowly, the godless garden roasts under a withering sun. It's easy to become a misanthrope in this time, given the colossal failure of accountability. And so we come to the urban nightmare. No one is safe. Gang, bullet, cash. That's the one T-shirt. Freedom, dignity, another. In the street, young boys play soccer with a rolled-up raincoat, duck in and out as cars race by. Older majitas slouch by the spaza shop. 3 toothless women stuck to the stairs, let them suck the baby's milk. And there is music, relentless beat, always music from the shebeen in the garage on Puza mansions. An old man shuffles by with empties. He is afraid of the girls at the corner. You know, those 3 on the roof of Cinnamon Court. He buys them airtime if they'll visit discreetly. Across the road from the hair salon, the ruin where the homeless sleep on the ceiling lights up every night, the flicker of their fires, phantoms. No one is safe from the gang that comes over the walls. The old man shuffles past the vandaliction. Rat tails gash the bathroom rails. Inside the mayoral office, the mayor repeats reports about urban decay. The media broadcast his policy. No surrender to the mafias. Foreigners are responsible. The boys playing soccer do not see the official sedan. The man behind the wheel barely wakes from his orgasm. The youngest boy's in the gutter, neck broken on impact. The bloody fender bends back into the sunset. Lucky, the media were asleep in their hammocks. Lucky, there is no one to video the panties on the car seat. The mayor's open bottle of heavenly spirits. Now, the oldest boy's crying. Ball popped, game exploded. Clouds shade the street. Wind whips round the water tower. The old man shares his words. He is a guy who has dreams. Wasekaya, no one is safe from the gang that comes over the walls. No one is safe. But the biggest crooks are the white-collar brigade, who sell you insurance, sell you electric wire and boiling hot dogs. Truly, there's no point trying to play it safe by living in a safe. There's no point dying trying to keep the pin safe. There's no point trying to outrun the inhuman race. On the way, at the intersection of Acorn Lane and Louis Botha, I gave 2 rand to a stained woman with a hole for a mouth. At the intersection of Primrose Crescent and Marigold, I gave 1 rand 70 to a smirking man with a crippled swagger. At the intersection of Albertina, Sisulu Street, and Main, I gave 50 cents to a burnt-out child with a burning hand. At the intersection of Joe Slovo Drive and Abel, I gave 1 rand 20 to an old woman who carried a bundle of snot on her blanketed back. At the intersection of Jan Smuts Avenue and Empire, I gave 5 rand to a vacant glue sniffer who pawed the heavens and drooled on my window. Home? How could I reach home? Bringing forth. Eve was there, alone. She had no need for another. She was full-breasted, and she lay in the garden, seeding herself, and her milk made her happy. Eve after Eve after Eve. But when the moon was full and red, a warring rod and whirling light disturbed her womb, till a hard-muscled child pulsed out. So Eve made Adam, made herself and unmade herself, made a man to stand beside and against her. It is never quiet in the garden. There is always vibration. There is always vibration. And still Eve lies alone, bringing forth Adam after Adam after Adam. Non-delivery, road closure. Freedom Park across from Elders. ShopRite sign gives it status. Moonless night, roads lit by burning felt meet black flames of tire. And in this haze, blurred shapes run about. Shadows stream from shattered shacks, drag wood and rocks across the highway to force open government's hand, force the indecent to be decent. Yes, the phantoms dump boulders, clench fists across the tarmac, make each turn of the driver's wheel a jerk of brakes, to force blind eyes to see the need for land, for work. So note the red lines, demanding power from power, shelter from a cold state, production in a time of retrenchment. On this moonless night, shadows rouse the flames, all traffic backed up in Freedom Park as people cry out, Israeletu, we need homes. This next poem I wrote many years ago during the invasion of Iraq by Mr. Bush to save the Iraqis from their dictator. Of course, today in Gaza, we have a massacre of equal proportion. The father holds his dead son in his arms. The camera clicks, and his grief is able to cover the whole world and history. The father is holding his dead son because an American armed personnel carrier moments earlier was blown up by a suicide bomber. The father is holding his murdered son because the Americans who invaded Iraq to free the people of their vicious dictator throw chocolates for children from armed personnel carriers. The father has been photographed holding his murdered son because the Americans destroyed what they liberated. And again, fascist challenge for power. The father holds his dead son, and I imagine holding my son, bloody and breathless, my precious son, all bloody and breathless, and I cry with the father in Baghdad, whose son chased chocolates thrown from armed personnel carriers, bags of sweets for 20 other children whose fathers now carry spattered with iron fragments and the flesh of the suicide bomber. The father's tears fall onto his son, fall onto me, holding my son in my arms. The father's tears fall, and I kiss my son, and then let him run out to play, while I look at the man in Baghdad and wonder about the funeral. I watch my son play in the garden and wonder how the father in Baghdad is managing to go about his life. Then I call to my son. I hold him and kiss him again and again. I want to protect him from the sweets of human madness. Questions for World Insanity Day. Why are there still hungry, homeless children in the streets? Why are there old people still shivering because they don't have money for electricity? Why have we messed up the ozone? Why aren't the government people honest? Why do we need so many drugs? Why do some need to step on ants? Why do some people have so much money? Why do some people need so much money? Why do some people love dogs and cats more than they love other people? Why is there such a thing as beauty? Why do we die? All together, children. Say thank you for beauty. Say thank you for love. Thank God for thinking of us. Love God like yourself. Do good. Do what you can. Hey, black mud, out of you comes the white lily. Out of you comes the water flame. And from your ooze come vibrations, turning air into sand, sand into crystal, black mud. From your lips come rough rolls and kisses. From your womb come hot phrases and cutting edges. Black mud, how do you and the drum say it? How do you and the sax play it? Black mud, toes digging your bed of beats, heart is an ivory ripple, hot and cool like a drunkard's drool at a hooker's nipple. You got it, black mud, you got it. Out of you comes the white lily. Out of you comes the water flame. Valley of lilies, high in the kloof, Reed River runs, leaves fall upon the waters, leaves fall upon the waters. Valley of lilies, black bank of soil, green cradling candle, bee dangled in a white cup, bee dangled in a white cup. Valley of lilies, yellow stamen, gleaming far, striped husk of silent buzzing, 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 striped husk of silent buzzing, buzzing. Valley of lilies, wine water woo, night angle sunshine, worker sips eternal honey, worker sips eternal honey. She sits on the bare bed, thin grey blanket. She pulls at her breast, as if to feel the children pulling there. She lights a cigarette. She lights and drags heavy. She's toothless, relaxing with a stocking round her head. Mannenberg, inside the flat. She plays with a baby and laughs. She throws the baby from side to side and laughs. In the street, dogs announce the late-night shuffle of delinquent feet. She knows those feet. She stands at the window, looks down. Yellow Manenberg, thin dogs, some worm out for escape. On quiet grey days, when trees hang listless, and the breeze that so often lightens your window is slack, slight eddies come upon the leaves like murmurs. What movement can cut through to the future? What voice can call up the spirits of birth? It may seem the only true growth is sleep. You lie down as bells and other music chime along your legs, your thighs, warming your arms, your curled hands, while outside the street, the buildings, the trees are only names you dictate. You roll deeper, each muscle ebbing into dreamfulness. This next poem, I'd like some interaction. I'm going to read out a statement, and you should please call out true or false, whichever you believe is the case. Yeah. Felicia is wearing a brown dress and a wig that looks like a wig. True or false? Felicia's alone at 2 a.m. in the city, hitching a ride. True or false?
True.
Felicia does not do sex.
False.
Felicia does not do sex for money.
True. Well,
Felicia, blank face. Felicia has smooth skin and big breasts.
true.
Felicia tells the man who stops for her that she's tired and is going home to sleep.
False.
Felicia gives him directions.
False.
Felicia tells the man she was visiting her sick mother.
False.
Felicia does not have a sick mother.
False.
Felicia says she must get up early for work.
True.
False.
Felicia does not react when the man caresses her knee.
True.
Felicia listens while he tells her he's not looking for sex.
False.
Felicia does not react when the man caresses her breast.
True.
False.
Felicia caresses his crotch.
True.
Felicia tells the man to pull over behind a truck.
True.
Felicia does not complain when the man drives on and pulls over behind a tree.
True.
Felicia looks round anxiously.
True.
Felicia asks the man if he likes dark places.
False.
False.
Felicia's relieved. The man says no.
True.
Felicia makes the man hard and slips on a condom.
True.
True.
Felicia climbs on top of the man.
True.
Felicia makes moaning sounds while she rocks him.
True.
Felicia comes as he comes.
False.
Felicia adjusts her wig as she slips off the condom.
True.
Felicia throws the condom out the window.
True.
Felicia tells the man to drive back to the truck.
True.
Felicia tells the man to get in a house near the truck.
True.
Felicia jumps out of the car and runs.
True.
The man checks his pocket and finds his wallet is gone.
True.
True.
Felicia runs and runs and runs.
True.
Felicia runs all the way home.
True.
True.
Felicia is still running.
True.
True.
Hectic.
Sometimes the veil fades slowly. Sometimes the veil slips. Sometimes the veil is ripped in one motion. A wave forms, swells, reaches its high point. Then breaking is followed by a lull, a windy or calm surface. Slowly, the new tide rises. A young man catches a fish, a small fish. He laughs excitedly, throws it back into the ocean. It is too small to eat, or he tosses it into a can to be used as bait. Yes, he still dreams of a big fish. Sometimes the veil yields to another veil. Sometimes the veil itself decides to unveil. Sometimes we cannot believe the veil is a veil. Sometimes the veil is so beautiful, we insist on it. Earth was sundered here, rock shorn to sheer face. Then after the fire and ice, soil stepped up to carpet, and brown cloth filled the cracks. Seeds landed, borne by wind and water, green mass vegetating food for red-blooded creatures. Now we come to this place, name it holy, say it redeems the cramped minds of the human colony. And all this makes me wonder, for human art follows the forms of cosmic creation. I am silent, hearing the stream's song. The stream has no peer. The stream is too loud and too subtle, too insistent when it runs for all other music. I listen to the stream, massage my hoarse, anguished voice. Under the summer blue sky of Troyville, next to a marimba disguised as a bench, you spun out your threads, hands arching in the air, voice jumping from detail to detail. You described old women and old clothes, the grandmother you adore, who had struggled for the people, now enjoyed soap opera, political flame doused as the wheelchair makes pliant. Then you spoke of your breakdown in the corporate desert, the need to find a reason to work. Under the summer blue sky of Troyville, you smoked cigarette after cigarette and drank beer, and your face moved and your voice moved, sending messages of which I am not sure, your arms and neck turning from side to side. And I imagined kissing your back, wondering if once again I would fall in love with a delicate woman. Easter. Dacha afternoon in Natal Street. The beer mama at Celeste Mansion's doing fine. Easter Monday and the resurrection of the opposition to the ANC looks doubtful. After lunch, everyone crawls into bed, dreams of cheap prices at the spaza shop, stroke sensitive spots, till doorbells ring in the afterlife and Jehovah's Witnesses reset the boundaries of debate. Remember Hani? Hani? Chris Hani, yes, the communist, the MK leader. It's Easter again. We went to vote for the third time since Codessa bore its fruit. But it was your blood, Chris, finally carried us over the cataract to election. Exile. So many stories, Quattro and others. Underground days when fear of infiltration made men paranoid, when Soviet corruption made liberation posture the Freedom Charter. But watching the long lines at the Yeovil Recreation Center, I was reminded of the dead days, the days of greed and brutality. Sea points, Dutchmen throwing bergies into the bowels of their cop vans. Recalled the mournful drone of the foghorn, Ravonia locked up on Robben Island, brain sweepers keeping the slechts blanks clean, hopeless pass offenders crammed into Caledon Square, the parade stalls mournful at night, duck-headed Pondo women, felt-hatted men, maids and gardeners queuing for buses and trains to the nowhere that was Nyanga, then back in the morning to the somewheres that were Claremont and Cabs Bay. Better times, ocean and snook, yellow foam at Sandy Bay covering pale breasts, white wine sprayed across the lips of our Cape of Good Hope and sun worshippers. Then Hani at the picket, KFC owned by Jomo Sono in Twist Street, centralized bargaining. Yes, Chris, you came to wear the strikers' t-shirt. You stood with the pickets and you did not make a speech. You made a stand. Now the unions support crooks, pervert mandates, the new police force, roadblocks, quere, Wabenzi cram share options into their bras, send directors over the company moon. Big Five malls strut as game farms stock up for dollars. AIDS ghosts wither at funerals. Get drunk on a cocktail of African potato and vitamins. Councillors slow track RDP shacks for kickbacks. And always the grey-haired boyish bankers caricature the insane. Yes, that's some of what we've got to deal with. Leftover leaves browning in the unkempt streets. But today, I remember you, Chris Hani, your quiet dignity. Wonder where we'd be now without your being martyred. Your spirit is still here. Years of bittersweet freedom. And it is better. But how much better would it have been with your leadership? Remember you well, Chris Hani. The women are out. Streets slide with their sway, walking in pairs, skin-tight slacks, breast-hugging tops. How can men not stare? The women are out, elegant, clicking heels, sure-footed and free, strolling to dance, rolling hips and buttocks. How can men not smile? the women are out. Night perfume breathes deep, pregnant with wild seed. They fill the starry universe with throbbing ascent. How can men remain in when women are out? Let me end off, I think, with, let me check. Yeah, sorry, I'm just checking through here. Actually, I'll end off with some poems in tribute to the Botsotso Jesters, the performance group that really gave me a very good entree into South African poetry in the early 90s. And I'll do a poem by Sipiwe Kangwenya, and I'd like to invite you to participate. When I say Kliptown, Shantytown, then you say Shantytown, Kliptown. Kliptown, Shantytown,
Shantytown.
Town, Kliptown. Dreams silenced by the morning train, footsteps of running commuters. Kliptown, Shantytown.
Shantytown.
Kliptown. The sky
Kliptown.
loses its brain. Its torrents start to rain. People use tables as boats. Kliptown, Shantytown.
Shantytown.
Kliptown.
Days young,
Kliptown.
women wash clothes down the river. Children swim like fish in dirt. Kliptown, Shantytown. Shantytown.
Shantytown.
Factory machines
Kliptown.
cease. Workers return home like cattle to ghetto smoke and kisses of longing. Kliptown, Shantytown.
Shantytown.
Kliptown.
Kliptown.
Frogs croak, crickets chirp, children snore, and nakedness entangles with passion till dawn, till dawn. Kliptown,
Shantytown.
Kliptown, Kliptown.
Kliptown.
And here's a poem that actually defined the Botsotso Jesters. Isabella Motadinyana gave us our name. One leg in, another leg out. Tight me up, strongly sewn, visible mending. Back pocket trademark, silver buttons attached. Not woven once, twice, or thrice. Die is mos Botsotsos. Back pocket, front pocket. Nog eenmaal talk to me. Die is mos Botsotsos. Pull high, stretch on a highway. Ons pedestrian moet dove. No attention to whistlers may weave it. No hearing sweet nothings. Strongly sewn. Die is mos Botsotsos. As you will have gathered, the Botsotso was a type of jean with flared bottoms that was very fashionable in Soweto in the 1950s. So the Botsotso Jesters came from quite a playful place to talk truth to power. And then from Ike Mboneni Muila, the master of Skamto, of Tsotsita, Blome Madal, ek is 'n ou Texan Terry, binne in die tone, change deur lana, op en af, Blome Madal, ek spin in die tone, ek nou die dag, jy sal never nie skaaf kry nie, check lapa site, Kalaza Madala site, ek vang hulle, is net dresh, die een is 'n ou Mudraseni, die ander een is 'n ou Madala, die laaste een is 'n ou Mavuka. Jy moet onthou, skyf is a process whereby cigarette passes from the owner to the parasite. Blome Madal. No finer poem has ever been written about passing the scaife, etc. And lastly, a poem by Anna Varney, who was the 5th member. I think quite an appropriate poem. Questions and unburnt answers. I am, but I am in the wind. We turn rage into sweet puddings, serve it up in large portions. They call what they're doing reconstruction, but their reconstruction knows nothing about foundations. We know change means war. We move slowly, slowly, as a sigh, reaching for hands of our children as we cross the roads. Right, so thank you. I hope that was
Yeah,
edifying.
thank you so much. Can we please unmute and give a big round of applause? Everybody who can unmute, please unmute.
Oh,
Thank you so much. This was so interesting. And I was really intrigued by how you began your reading, with kind of explaining why you write. And you said that you write to be engaged and enraged. And I like that ethic, the ethic of being engaged and enraged. And I think that comes across in so much of the poetry that you've shared with us tonight. There's been a lot of like fire and mob, and the idea of, I think it was the third poem that you read when you talked about the sullied. I think the ideal is always us talking about the unsullied. We want people to be unsullied, and leaning towards the sullied was a very interesting way of, I guess, reading humanity in a sense. And so I'd like to take this time to open up for any questions that might be in the room. If you have any questions for Allan, speak now, forever hold your peace.
indeed.
Is anybody wanting to ask a question or make a comment? Jacques, please go ahead.
Allan, hi. Sorry, I was late. I was writing a terrible poem, and I didn't get to say hello before you started, but I loved your reading. I wondered if you wanted to say something about that image of the flower growing out of the black mud. I think it echoes something that Nondwe is saying, that things mustn't be too pure, that there has to be something rugged. And I also got that feeling. I'm not going to put it into words very well now, but I also got that feeling from the poem you wrote, questions for the insane or from the insane, where you were almost doing different voices. It's kind of, it's an interruption of this kind of smooth stream of beautiful words. This is something disruptive and ragged, and it's that kind of aesthetic. I don't know if you want to say something about that.
Well, the title of that poem it was written to celebrate World Insanity Day. So that every day is World Insanity Day. And that's the problem, that those who define what is sanity are themselves so far from being sane. And so we suffer the indignity of their leadership. But at the same time, none of us is unsullied. We are all of us, as it were, victims of our own humanity. Our genetic makeup is defective. We are a work in progress, and a pretty crazy work. And so we slaughter each other, and we emotionally destroy ourselves at the same time. So it's a good time to be a misanthrope and I think it's time for me to become a hermit. Ha ha ha. But I'm a social being to withdraw from this craziness. So I spit fire in order to stay alive and make sure that I am tenderized to the point where I don't fall asleep in my comfortable hole and forget about the ones across the road in that vandalized building shivering in the middle of winter.
But I would say it's
Could you speak up, please?
it's misanthropy up to a point though, right? Because something about the way that you rage makes me feel that the poetry can still change lives, and that has something to do with why you write as well.
Well, I think writing is it's not something I choose particularly. It's a compulsion. But at the same time, it's not enough. One also has to organize. And I think that's where artists cannot afford the luxury of the ivory tower. That is a petty bourgeois indulgence, if I might use that hackneyed term. So we've got to get out there, and our work must stir people, but not simply to be satisfied with a quiet turn of phrase, or let's say a pedantic turn of phrase, or even a beautiful turn of phrase. That phrase must inspire so that people will really think, am I my brother and sister's keeper, or do I exist as an island? So all art is really the shriek from the wounded soul to say, hey, let's get outside of comfort and illusion. We are all of us masters at illusion, at pretending that somehow we can ride out this mortal frame, and the sunset is welcoming. Well, the sunset in Gaza is hardly welcoming, and at least South Africa did take a stand. I mean, we know that we are hardly an example of a free and equal society. On the free side, let me take that back. We do have many freedoms which were hard fought for and which we are struggling to maintain. But on the equality side, we know unemployment, poverty, homelessness, yeah, we are top of the charts when it comes to those social ills. So we can't simply say, well, apartheid is over, it's dead. It's not. The legacy is very much with us. And of course, I grew up in Cape Town, and I know the stark inequalities of the Western Cape. Those have hardly changed. That's something for us to wake up to and work towards.
Thank you. Yeah.
Some very salient thoughts. I'm actually struggling with some of these thoughts and ideas. Well, I feel like you're provoking us, by us meaning, I guess, creatives, people who are writing. You are provoking us to not only end at producing, at writing, at at being at this open mic, that the writing transcends this kind of space and becomes something that affects, the material reality of people. So I don't know how that works out. And I that this is very selfish. This is on my part rather than for everybody. So I feel provoked. Are there any other questions in the room?
Well, I'm happy if I'm provoking. I've been provoked by others, and I'm happy to be part of the chain of provocation.
Mary says the explanation was a poem. She's talking about your response to Jacques. And she's saying that you are writing poetry as you speak. So she's really enjoying this chat. I have a question about the interactive poem that you did, where we were doing the true or false. That poem, I found myself being stuck in just saying true, true, true to so many of those statements. And I wonder what happens when you read that poem in other spaces. So this is one space which is odd and interaction is not as easy, but I'm sure you've read it maybe in a space where there are people who are there and are able to respond. How does it work out and how does it change every time you read it?
Well, each time there is a different audience. Obviously, on Zoom, it's hardly an appropriate or effective means. But in a live situation, I mean, generally the space just becomes very vital and fired up, and people are shouting and laughing because it's obviously a comical piece, although the ending is quite sad. But yeah, you get so many different responses, and it's just a fun piece. It's a bit of theatre. It's
Okay.
poetry and theatre, basically. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Any other? Oh, Ed. Hi, Allan. Thank you for reading and the different ways in which your poetry explores, as you put it, the reality that it is never quiet in the garden. Enjoyed the performance and provocative aspects, as well as the storytelling. So that's from Ed.
Well, mhm.
Are there any other questions? Any other comments?
Hello.
Hi, Gabrielo.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you, Allan, for a wonderful reading. I know that you're a publisher. You publish poetry and stories and prose and other stuff. But just thinking around the poetry itself, there's an aspect of performance or a performative aspect towards in the way that you deliver your poetry. And I mean, we have a tendency to kind of think around poetry as either performance poetry or page poetry. Some might refer to as page poetry. Like, how do you sort of weave that into your own voice? And do you think about it differently when you write, or is it just a kind of spontaneous process when you put it on the page and when you deliver it? How do you sort of negotiate the space?
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, in the late 80s, well, I was away from South Africa for quite a number of years when I was writing poetry. But when I came back in the mid-80s, of course, poetry played quite a substantial role in the cultural life of the political struggle. So one tended, if you were politically involved and wanted to reach people, you had to, in a sense, tailor your work for a mass audience and for an audience that wanted to be inspired for the struggle, to continue with that. So there was an element there of tailoring your work, but I didn't always consciously decide, well, now I'm going to write a struggle poem. And my style is, I think, my own. So there are some poems that I wouldn't necessarily read out in public that are more suited for the written word, for the page. But others quite naturally found a way to be presented as performance. And I'm quite prolific. So I write a lot. So it's not difficult to find material to suit different venues and audiences. So I think that as a playwright, though, I've written a lot for the stage. I mean, there you are very aware that there's an audience, that I mean, your target is to deliver these lines. Whereas with poetry, there's a place for both. There's some poets who are more meditative, who aren't writing necessarily driven by rhythm. And for me, rhythm is essential. I mean, even if it's just a 3-line poem, look at the haiku, you know, rhythm is essential. So poetry and music, poetry and movement, that's what attracted me to poetry as performance. And of course, in Africa, the spoken word has long been treasured and is so connected to music, to the beat, right? The djembe is the soul of Africa, if you like. So, yeah, I think that's more or less it. That's why with the Botsotso Jesters, we created a performance group that was bringing together different voices. You know, if we like, the settler voice and the vernacular voice. So we can't shy away from our backgrounds and our histories, but to create this new poetic culture, we have to be open to the different strands and weave them into a new garment, so to speak. So Kabelo, as a Botsotso poet, I think you've been exposed to the vision. And of course, we always welcome new voices. And our publishing program is continuing. And I think we have found some amazing poets and given them the exposure that is necessary and deserved. And long may that continue.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Alan. And yes, long may it continue. Publishing is so hard in this country, especially for poetry. So, yeah. Are there any other questions? Any other comments before we take a break? No questions? No comments?
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
That is a very important statement that you just made, Nonde. And maybe Alan can touch a little bit on it, like the challenges of publishing poetry or the type of material that or what informs the kind of writing that Botsotso publishes. Because I mean, I think for me, when I think about what is South African poetry, as somebody who's multilingual, it would be coming from various spaces, you know. And sometimes I encounter, like, you know, local languages, like I'm Sesotho speaking, I speak a bit of Xhosa, but when I encounter it on the page, it's a bit jarring, you know. It's not the same way that I'm sort of accustomed to reading English poetry. What are some of the challenges that maybe, you know, I mean, Allan might speak a little bit about it. You just read a piece by Braik, Bloma Matala. And to encounter that kind of piece on the page, it's something that obviously I would have encountered via Botsotso. And it was not something that I was kind of exposed to when I was in high school. Yeah.
Well, I think part of Botsotso's objective by bringing together poets from disparate backgrounds is to open our ears. I mean, we've just recently published Basil du Toit, a very fine collection called Studies in Khoisan Verbs and Other Poems. And those are all sonnets. Can you believe it? Where Basil has resurrected the old sonnet, but he does it in free verse. So it's not rhyming, you know, quatrains or whatever. Yeah. So we're not looking at simply, you know, a narrow definition of what South African poetry should be. Not at all. We believe the richness of our different traditions, both colonial, neo-colonial, pre-colonial, you know, it's a mixed masala, and that's our vitality. So we shouldn't get too hung up about where we come from. It's more important where we are now and where we're going to. And I mean, if we look at, you know, the rich background of spoken word, which is now increasingly becoming, let's say, commercialized, we also see the dangers, the pitfalls of a social system that is impacting, I believe, negatively on South African culture, where we talk about artpreneurs as if we are business people selling toothpaste. I mean, we're back to that. But maybe Gayton is going to give us a surprise exam. That's what he said. We had the so-called intellectuals, the Palo Jordans and others who failed. But maybe Gayton is going to come with a new voice and a new perspective. Well, we can only hope so, right? Because we've had charlatans who've directed the development of art and culture for 30 years. So, yeah, let's just say that it's never been more difficult to publish poetry, but I believe there still is an audience, a readership, and there's a writing community that is disparate, but is trying, struggling. Well, I mean, look at Red Wheelbarrow, where you're bringing
Absolutely.
together many different poets. And I think, yeah, that's the way to go.
All right. Thank you. And thank you to the Red Wheelbarrow. Amandla.
Where to?
Thank you so much. I
All
mean,
right.
just to add on this conversation, I think the conversation about art and the value of art and well, specifically poetry, to limit my comments to poetry. When we look at poetry, at the publishing in poetry, at the emergence of all of these slam competitions and the corporatization of these spaces, I think we do need spaces like the Red Wheelbarrow, where I mean we don't really make any money from hosting and doing this, but we are fostering a community around poetry, around not only written poetry, but also poetry being heard, different kinds of poetry being heard, both the spoken and, you know, the written. And I feel like if we had more spaces that were like this, that were bigger, that were in person, that would just make our poetry scene so much more, not alive, but it would feel more valid. It would feel like we were doing something bigger. It's a shame that we're only limited to the Western Cape and having in-person events, but you know, even if there were other spaces that were like this in other provinces outside of just the slam spaces, I think would change the face of poetry and even maybe produce more poets that are wanting to publish in traditional publishing houses. Because also, it's also this, the corporatization has also led to a lot of self-publishing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that can also impact just the ecosystem negatively. But those are my 2 cents on the matter. Are there any other comments? Any other questions? Allan, do you want to add anything to this? Or is this it?
No, not really. I think
Okay.
I think that's it.
All right, awesome. So we're gonna take a 5-minute break, come back at 2040. No? Yeah, 2040. At 2040. So that would be 5 minutes for the open mic session. So I'll see you guys in 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Brent, how do we switch this off?
I'll do that. I'll do it for you. Oh, you aren't. Are you
It
done?
was a 5-minute break.
Okay, so we just do. Let's see what's going on here. Well, it's just a break.